Well, the Rookie of the Years have been announced, which is great news for fans in Atlanta and also for fans in athletics.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And we are now the #1 sports podcasting network. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of us is right here on the YouTube page. And make sure to leave that hashtag every day, Sully, as it helps us find your comments. And today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And hey, let's do the trivia question. The trivia question was, what pitcher who was not in on the fix threw a pair of complete game victories for the White Sox in the 1919 World Series? And RIP Baseball got it correct. The trivia answer, that would be the immortal Dickie Kerr. Dickie Kerr was not considered one of the top pitchers, and the gamblers didn't think they had to bribe him, because if they had Eddie Cicotti and Lefty Williams, well, then why did they need anyone else? And Dickie Kerr wasn't in on the fix, and away he went. By the way, I've mentioned this before. One of the luckiest breaks a pitcher ever got was Red Faber. Red Faber was, for a while, one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher in the American League, and was a key member of that 1919 White Sox team. But he got sick just before the World Series and was removed from the roster. So gamblers never came to Red Faber, even though he would have been a prime person to try to bribe, and he was not available for the World Series and therefore wasn't indicted. And guess what happened to him? He wasn't in trouble. No one paid him off. He wound up having one of the best records in base certainly the American League for the next couple of years, and was eventually elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. So good for him for getting sick at the right time. Hey, let's talk a little bit. They're starting to hand out more awards. They've handed out Silver Sluggers and other stuff like that. And quite frankly, those awards never really interest me that much. If that's your thing, who am I to blame you? But the fact of the matter is, I'm not going to do much discussion on. Good luck to everyone who won a award there. But they gave out the Rookie of the Year, which I always find interesting, and that was the big award that was announced today. And they went to Nick Kurtz of the Sacramento A's and Drake Baldwin of the Atlanta Braves. So let's cover Drake Baldwin first. The results of the National League Rookie of the Year were Drake Baldwin got 21 out of 30 first-place votes. Cade Horton probably would have won the Cy Young Award if not for some injury issues, won the Rookie of the Year, I meant to say. And then Caleb Durbin, who got a couple of second-place finish votes and 13 third-place votes, finished third. I thought Caleb Durbin would have gotten a better showing, actually. I liked him as a Rookie of the Year candidate, but it shows you what I know. But Drake Baldwin got it, and he is the catcher for the Atlanta Braves, have made Murphy pretty much expendable at this point. And look, I have no problem with this award. Again, this probably would have been Horton under different circumstances, but Baldwin had a fine year, and he was consistent pretty much throughout since he took over the starting role. He played 124 games for Atlanta. He finished with an 810 OPS, an OPS plus of 126. He hit his 19 home runs. He drove in 80 runs, and he was not caught stealing. He didn't attempt a stolen base, but in a year that was very disappointing for Atlanta, this was a team that a lot of people thought may have been having another chance to win another division title or be a big contender, and they wound up finishing 76 and 86. Once again, the injury bug wound up biting Ronald Acuña Jr., who, when healthy, was obviously terrific. But they got not necessarily a great year from Michael Harris II. May have to try the third next time. And Matt Olson, he had a good year, but Austin Riley had a down year, and they didn't get a lot of production from their middle infield. So when you have a player like Drake Baldwin come in and be super productive, that can really help this team. They only got 20 starts out of Chris Sale this year. They got a terrible year out of Bryce Elder. And so they didn't get, they didn't have the year that Atlanta really would have expected. But the fact of the matter is, Atlanta has a lot of talent on this team, and they had a down year. And so when you take a look at the team going to 2026, having a player like Drake Baldwin there, they still have some players who are still very good. And you can have, you still have an Olson who could lead an offense, and Ronald Acuña Jr., who, when he's healthy, is absolutely one of the best players in the National League. And certainly could be, you can make the argument he's the best player not named Shohei Ohtani when he's healthy. These are all positive things for Atlanta moving forward. We saw, the Toronto Blue Jays were a last place team in 2024, and they got within a lot of things of the World Series title this last year. And one of the things I remember talking to my cousin Dave, who's a rabid Met fan, when he was all the things that made him angry about the Mets flopperino this year, he said, we got the Braves to have a down year and they couldn't take advantage of it. You got Philadelphia, and they're going to be a year older. Now, I still think Philadelphia is a very talented team, but, all teams eventually have a dip. The Marlins are going to have, hopefully, if they're smart, they'll have a bounce back and improve upon what was a year where for about half the season they were pretty good. And the Mets, well, we know they have talent. Just are they talented enough to beat the Reds? The Atlanta Braves are a team that certainly have the talent to move forward. Drake Baldwin is only going to be 25 years old. Matt Olson is only 32. That's not that old. Acuña, Michael Harris II. They have a bunch of players all on the right side of 30 as they look to have a bounce back year. And so Drake Baldwin is, if you're an Atlanta fan, hopefully going to be a key part of moving forward there. And Snitker is gone, and Walter Weiss has taken over the role of the manager of the Atlanta Braves. And Walt Weiss he's a baseball lifer, and it's the kind of managerial signing that I like for a team that has some ambition, in that he's someone who has a lot of connections with the organization, obviously, and he has been a major league manager. Call me crazy, but I think managerial experience is necessary to be a manager, even if you're not managing in the major leagues. So minor league experience, I think you should have experience as a manager before you manage a major league team. Now, I know that makes me a radical. I bet some of you think that makes me a Luddite. But the fact of the matter is, sometimes you want to have that manager who has been there and maybe hasn't had the big success. And, obviously Walt Weiss managed a Rockies team that, had questionable talent on it. But he's made some mistakes. He made some right things, and he has already done it before. So you have a talented team with a Rookie of the Year moving forward. The team had a downturn last year, make a couple key acquisitions, and the Atlanta Braves can look really good. And Walt Weiss was a Rookie of the Year himself. And he won the Rookie of the Year while playing for the, say it with me, Oakland A's. Well, the don't call them Sacramento A's had a pretty good day in terms of the Rookie of the Year vote, and that's worth talking about. All right, let's hear from our good friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is, well, it's where you want to go if you're looking for tickets, like NFL tickets, because the season is back, and there's nothing better than being in that big, huge stadium and that event of an NFL game, or for me, an event of a baseball game or a playoff game. Do you know what? it's fantastic, but sometimes getting tickets, that could be a hassle. Between the lines, the login screens, the price jumping at checkout, it can be frustrating. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price. All fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Now, I use Game Time getting my playoff tickets at Dodger Stadium, and it's so easy. Just a couple of taps, boom, boom, I got great deals. If you're an NFL fan, you can have games as low as $100, which I understand is pretty low for an NFL game. Now, you got your zone deals. I use these all the time. You pick the section. This is where I like to sit, and Game Time picks the seats, and you can save big. I got to be honest, it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So what you got to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. You got to download Game Time today. There's the banner. Game Time today. I thought I had the banner on. All right. Next up, you saw the A's had a unanimous pick for Rookie of the Year with Nick Kurtz. And his teammate, Jacob Wilson, was not quite unanimous second place, but they pretty much clocked everyone. Nick Kurtz, unanimous in first place. Jacob Wilson, pretty secure. He had 107 points for second place. Roman Anthony finished third with 72 points. And I get that. I mean, Roman Anthony was really turning into a key player for that Red Sox team down the stretch, but he was hurt. And boy, oh boy, the Red Sox really could have used him in the playoffs against the Yankees, but I digress. Nick Kurtz, who was the number one pick, the last Oakland A's first-round pick, as he was fourth overall in the 2024 draft out of Wake Forest. I remember the A's got a little bit of guff for picking a first baseman with the number one pick or the number 4 pick, their first pick there, because, well, you can get first baseman, you should get something, this and that, and the other thing. Well, how do you like him now? I mean, he had an OPS. He hit in 117 games for your beloved Sacramento A's. His OPS was 1.002. He hit 36 bombs. He batted 280, if you like that. His slugging was 619, and he got himself a Silver Slugger award. So I think that was a pretty decent pick for the Oakland A's. Now they're the, well, we'll get to that in a second. But you take a look that he was in that draft right now. Who else has made it to the major leagues? Cam Smith of the Cubs made it. And you had Christian Moore has made it to the major leagues for the Angels. And, oh, yeah, Trey Savage, who, I've joked that if the Blue Jays had won the World Series, if I were Trey Savage, I would just retire. Because what else can you do? What else can you do? I mean, you became a World Series hero and everything like that. Let's go. But Nick Kurtz of that draft looks like it is, so far, he's in the lead. Trey Savage may pass him pretty soon. Travis Bazana from Australia was the number one pick for Cleveland that year. And he has yet to make it to the major leagues, although he made it as far as AAA Columbus. But Nick Kurtz, terrific all-around year, and exactly what you want. When the A's had that number 4 pick, they wanted to get a slugger on the team who can get to the big leagues pretty fast, and lo and behold, that's what you got. Now, his teammate, Mr. Wilson, who saw himself in the All-Star game this year, Jacob Wilson started the All-Star game, and remember, he made his debut with the Oakland A's, and he got hurt on his very first game. So he comes back this year, becomes an All-Star, finishes second in the rookie year balloting, and finished with a .311 batting average with an .800 OPS, 13 homers of his own, and played solid defense at shortstop. And that is a terrific 1-2 punch that they have there for the A's. And not only that, there's one other thing to bring up. And I'll bring up something else in the third segment about the National League vote. But you had this year Kurtz and Wilson 1-2 in the Rookie of the Year vote. And I don't think anyone could debate that, how they did. But you also got a point. Luis Morales, he got a fifth place point, and so he wasn't exactly in the running for winning the whole kit or the caboodle. But it got me thinking. You have Kurtz, you have Wilson, and you have Morales. And Morales wound up starting, he pitched 10 games. 9 of them were starts. And he pitched pretty well in Sacktown. And look, I've said a lot about the A's situation. Hell, I hosted Locked On A's along with Locked On MLB for a whole season. I think I've made my opinions pretty clear on what I think about, Fisher and the insanity of this move. The insanity of moving out of Oakland and playing in a minor league ballpark. The insanity of the Vegas market, which I don't think is an ideal situation for baseball. You're banking on summer tourism in a desert city. Isn't that kind of when the tourism dips? Is when everything's on fire? And oh yeah, baseball is a local interest sport, not a national interest sport. I mean, there are a lot of reasons I dislike the Vegas as a landing spot. Even if you make the case, and a case can be made, that the Bay Area can't support two teams, there are other markets that would make more sense, and I don't like how they were ripped out of it. I've gone over this all. Them in Sacramento, I think it is an absolute travesty that they're not called the Sacramento A's. They're in Sacramento, even if you're not staying there for long. And we know they're going to be there for a couple more years. Now, the ballpark cam in Las Vegas shows that there is some progress being made building the stadium in Las Vegas. I want to end this rumor right now. I am not an expert in stadium construction, so I don't know really how far along they are, but at least they're seeing some things sticking out of the ground, some rebar and some concrete. Then again, I also saw that in Sacramento for the abandoned Arco baseball stadium that they were going to have next to the Arco Arena. They started building it and they stopped, and it's now a swamp. So until they have more than they have already in Sacramento, I'll believe it when I see it. But they are, to be fair, they are building something. And if they are building something and they wind up going to Las Vegas, despite all my misgivings, I want them to be a great success. But they could also be a success in Sacramento. And even if they're there for just a few years, call them the Sacramento A's. Give the fans something to cheer about because they have young talent on the team. They have 3 players who got Rookie of the Year votes this year, including the top 2. And guess what? Shea Langoliers is under 30. Lawrence Butler is under 30. J.J. Bleday is under 30. Tyler Soderstrom is under 30. They have a lot of players on this squad, and they have Brent Rooker, who is 30, but still can club them. And so you can have a decent lineup there. And maybe if Sears improves a little bit, and maybe if, I still think they're eventually going to trade Luis Severino, but if you have Luis Morales pitching there, teams can turn around. The A's didn't have a terrible year last year. They finished 10 games under 500, but it's not like they were a 90-loss team. They made some improvements. And we saw there was, in their final year in Oakland, they got off to a horrific start, but they went through a stretch where they were playing quite well, thank you very much. So as long as they're there, and as long as you have some young talent, the 2 top young talent in the American League played in Sacramento this year. And we've seen teams turn things around faster. The A's had a better year last year than Toronto had the year before. and they went from that position to getting as close as they did. It is not an outrageous thought to think of the A's being a potential wild card team this year. It isn't. And they have some young players in their system and on the major league roster. Call them the Sacramento A's. Because you look at that, it's so insane that it's not on there. I know I've talked about it, but there are some young players, and you can make them part of the, I don't know, the experience of being a young Sacramento sports fan, saying, hey, Kurtz, he was my guy. Wilson was my guy. He wasn't under Connie Mack. He wasn't under Finley or La Russa or Billy Bean. He was my guy when they were in Sacramento. And you can leave little seeds like that, seeds of fandom, even if it's for a fleeting moment. You can have a Sacramento fan saying, remember when the A's were here for a few years? They were our team for a few years. And Nick Kurtz was my guy. Having your guy is such a huge part of baseball fandom. You're seeing two players on that. We focused on the steroid players like Bonds and Clemens on that new Hall of Fame ballot that's coming out. But they also had Valenzuela and Mattingly and Dale Murphy. And if you grew up in the 80s as a Dodger fan, an LA fan, a Yankee fan, or a Braves fan, Fernando, Mattingly, or Murphy were your guy. So put the label on them and promote it. And you're going to put the little seeds. And if you're the commissioner of baseball, that's part of it. Develop those seeds and seed some of the fandom and seed some of that excitement. Because sometimes some of the players that people cherish closest to their hearts are the ones who played well when the team was not that great. Mattingly never played on a pennant winner. Dale Murphy mainly played on lousy Braves teams. And by the time, Murphy was up with the Braves and Mattingly was up with New York, their teams went on to greatness. So there's a sense of, they just missed it. And who knows, maybe this team will go on to greatness in Las Vegas. I hope they do. But you could have Sacramento fans say, hey, do you know what? When they were here, I had my guy. And that is not a small thing. Hey, let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel again, shall we? Now, the NBA is back, and there's no better way to get on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you ever miss the start of the game and you want to ride the hot hand, do you know what? FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head on over to FanDuel. It's the official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. All right. Hey, everyone, let me just make this absolutely clear. I want to thank you for making Locked On MLB your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network. Now, I mentioned that the A's have 3 players who got Rookie of the Year votes this year. And that should be a sign that they have some interesting building blocks to give the fans of Sacramento something to cheer about. Now, if you're wondering how a team like the Brewers were able to withstand some of the losses that they had and come back and have the best record in baseball, keep in mind they had, count it with me, 4 players who got Rookie of the Year votes this year. Caleb Durbin, Isaac Collins, Chad Patrick, and Jacob Mizorowski. That's a sign of a strong farm system And by the way, that's how you compete. That's how you compete. You bring up players and have them under control. Now, I mentioned that I want the Marlins to build upon a decent second half and to try to build what they failed to build upon, making the playoffs in 2023. And Augustine Ramirez got a few votes in the Rookie of the Year poll. He was brought in the Jazz Chisholm trade from the Yankees organization. Jacob Marcy and Humberto Hernandez all got votes in the Rookie of the Year pile. Now, I'm not saying that they all were players who were going to win the Rookie of the Year or whatnot, but there are 3 young players on the team who went through their rookie eligibility this year. And young players like that are the type of players you build upon. When I'm hearing stuff about the Marlins are thinking about, making some trades, or what will they do here? What will they do there? And I look up and I say, here you got 3 players who got Rookie of the Year votes, and you still have the likes of Edward Cabrera and Jansen Junk and Yuri Perez on, in their starting rotation, and Sandy Alcantara, who did not have a good year, but is obviously still talented. Now, the mentality you may have for someone like Alcantara, who won the Cy Young Award in It was in 2022, and then missed all of 2024, and now he's back, and he pitched 174 innings, but not very well. Thank you very much. And you look up and you see his contract situation shows that he could be a free agent after the 2027 season if they pick up the team option. But you'd be selling low on him. And he's a talented pitcher. And what if he needs that 1 year to get back into form? Marlins, you have young players on this team. You have a nice little foundation. And if the Mets continue to trip over themselves and the Phillies take even a slight step back, and some of the other teams that were wildcard teams in the National League may take a slight step back, that could open up the door for the Miami Marlins. They blew it by not building upon 2023 when they made the postseason. They got to be able to do it now. When I look up and I saw all those names who were Marlins players on the Rookie of the Year ballot, it just made me say, come on, guys, give a chance. Give it a chance. What are we doing here? Build upon young, exciting players under team control. And Alcantara's under team control for a couple more years too. Give it a shot. Why do you own a team if you're not going to give it a shot? Why not show your fans you're going to try to put something together? That's the reason why the fans don't show up to Miami. They've been burnt. I've made this point before, but it was made clear when I saw all those Marlin names on the ballot. Were they all as impactful as the ones for Milwaukee or the ones for Sacramento? No, but they're young players there who at least caught some of the attention of some of the voters there. We shall see. But please do it. I want I want every market to succeed. And by that, I don't mean win the World Series every year. That's, of course, impossible. But I want every market to have a team that is at least a contender now or clearly has a plan to be a contender very soon. You have it right there, Miami. Miami should be a great baseball city. And they've never given themselves the chance, even though they've won as many World Series titles as the Mets have, because they don't keep a team together. Keep something together. The Blue Jays kept some stuff together, and look what happened. They got to within a toe of the World Series, of winning the World Series. By the way, I know I made a mistake the other day when I called Ortiz a reliever. I corrected in mid-show, but I know I made that mistake. So please send more. Please send more corrections. And by the way, let's talk about the trivia question, which is, who was the oldest player ever to win the Rookie of the Year? That is the question to bring up. So Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on the Instagrams. And you can follow me. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball Podcast, talking about the Rookie of the Year vote and the fact that the Braves have a nice foundation for a comeback. A couple players for the A's should be the guy for young Sacramento fans. And please, Marlins, give it a shot. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.